and welcome to the Square Drive podcast. I'm honored, and with me today, I have a very special guest coming all the way from London, England. He's the account director of Red Knot Communications and has worked with the San Francisco Unicorns for the past 2 seasons. Having worked in sports betting, marketing, and PR, I'd like to give a warm welcome to Mr. Sam Wright. Thank you so much for joining me today. And firstly, I just wanted to ask, how's your day going? I know it's a little late in London right now.
No, it's a pleasure to be here, and great to see you again after seeing you last time out in Morrisville. Yeah, my day's going well. It's getting on a bit now, but my kid asleep, so hopefully we get a clean run. I have got a dog in the room, so if that kicks off, then who knows? But no, everything's going well. How about yours?
Everything's going well for me. Just started school and can't wait to get back to making videos. And yeah, let's go ahead and start. So, our first question is I just wanted you to talk a little bit about maybe your background and how you initially joined the sports industry.
Yeah, so I guess saying that I'm in the sports industry is maybe not quite accurate. I've started out in sports betting. I'm very aware that you're underage. You shouldn't know what betting is, but we can still talk about it. Obviously, it's a big thing in America as well at the moment. So yeah, I started out coming out of university doing an economics degree, realizing that I wanted to do something with the obviously quantifiable nature of that, but also my passion for sports. So that led me into a fairly niche, but maybe less so nowadays, role of a sort of odds compilation and modeling for sports betting companies. So that's a case of making the live odds for football matches, soccer matches, rugby matches, that sort of thing. I wasn't doing cricket at the time, but any random sport that I could get my hands on, it was just great to be a part of that action and sort of be on those sort of trading floors, seeing how these maths wizards were putting these models together. I went on to do that for 3, 4, 5 years, specializing in rugby towards the end of it. And then I realized that I sort of wanted to sort of move on really. So I think I wanted to stay roughly where I was in the gaming industry, sports betting industry, and sports as a whole. But I wanted to get my weekends back because obviously the key sports are Friday night, Saturdays, that sort of thing. And also go into a more broader role that I think suited me more long term. So that led me to where I am today in sort of marketing and sports PR really. So started out as a fairly junior position at a company called Square in the Air, a few other marketing manager roles, PR, B2B roles, and to where I am today, contracting and sort of working for Red Knot Communications.
Yeah, I know that's really cool because I know a lot of people are interested in sports, but they don't know that they can make it into their career. And I think that's really cool how you did that. I wanted
I
to,
think I think sorry, yeah, I think there's like hundreds of different ways into it, right? Obviously, from the top level, being a professional athlete, that was never going to be on my book. But yeah, coming down from the bottom through finance, through marketing, through law, anyway, which way there's yeah, so always keep your eyes open, I guess.
yeah. And there's a lot of opportunities here in the US as like sports are getting bigger. And yeah, it's just a great field to go into. Yeah, so the next question was, how did all of this going from marketing and PR lead you to joining the MLC and working with the San Francisco Unicorns?
Yeah, so company I work for, Red Knot, we are based out of the UK and the US, so across the Atlantic, and obviously that helps us with our cricket expertise, being in sports, PR, and marketing. So they've been working with San Fran Unicorns for the last 2 years. I joined them between those two seasons, during the sort of the first and the second MLC season. Obviously, after working a lot with Z and the team there and David in terms of getting the team off the ground and sort of spreading the word, talking to local people from San Francisco about what that means, telling the story of Venki, the owners, and sort of making the hype as big as possible around what that looks like. So I joined at a convenient time that they laid the foundation for that. And going into the second season is always a lot less frantic. I know there's a lot of hundreds and thousands of moving parts, as you probably saw when you came down to the game,
Mhm.
in terms of infrastructure, teams, management, etc. So yeah, basically I started working and this became a good fit. I think there was a few people in my team that also cricket fans, but in terms of how the timings worked, I managed to get the opportunity to go out there and work with the team, and it was an absolute privilege. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. This is a personal question for me. What was it like being with and working with so many international superstar athletes?
It's yeah. So I've done bits and bobs of work on the floor with teams in the past, but being in a sort of one hotel or moving hotel with a touring team for a long period of time, what was it almost 30 days in the end,
Mhm.
was it was a privilege. Yeah. First of all, I didn't know what I was getting into really. Obviously you get the likes of Pat Cummins, who are some of the most reputable cricketers in the world. And then you get the domestic players who are coming through the ranks and haven't got that sort of superstar status. So you don't really know what you're getting into. what I've realized within the first day or so really is that everyone's just in it together. So you don't feel like you're walking around these giants of the game. They're just the same as everyone else, really. When they're out there, they've got a job to do on the game day, got a job to do when they're training. But other than that, they're living their lives. Some are with their families, and they're all sort of after the same goal, which is winning the next game and then getting to the finals and then hopefully winning trophies. So yeah, it's something that sort of humbled me in that, yeah, these international players who obviously go from tour to competition, and they just treat people generally in the best way they can, and they're just the nicest people you could have met.
Mm. Yeah, I remember when I was there in Morrisville and I was talking to Pat Cummins and Corey Anderson. They were super like humble and like chill. And even though I was a child, they were like still taking me seriously, and that was super cool. Is that like something that goes around the team culture at in the Unicorns?
I think that I definitely felt that. I think first of all, when you look at Corey, and I'd give a shout out to Liam Plunkett here as well, in terms of whenever they're in an airport lounge and people ask what they're wearing or they're going into a hotel lobby, they're more than willing to chat for 5, 10, 15 minutes about what they're doing, what cricket is in the US. Obviously, you know a lot about it, but a lot of people don't, right? So when you go past thousands of people, it's a huge opportunity to sort of grow those eyes, especially after the World Cup. So yeah, I think they are willing, and the reason why some of these players are here is because they want to grow the game. Some of them are US domestic players already, so this is obviously their key market. But some of them see these opportunities working with such a progressive team with sort of owners that are really looking forward to building what is the market over 5, 10 years, not just a 1 year flash in the pan. It's great to see, and I think there's some big leaders in the team and some experienced players coming through the back of it that helping out the younger players who will just bring that legacy over the next sort of few seasons, I'd hope.
Yeah, especially with the it's talking about Corey specifically, the growth of the cricket in the US is crazy. There's so many more people like watching it and so many people wanting to play. How have your experience in MLC, how have you seen like specifically how the game's being grown?
Yeah, so I guess I'm probably not the best person to ask on that because having come in fairly late, so I was aware of MLC going into the first season. I always keep a keen eye on pretty much every sort of yeah T20 tournament and test tour around the world. Um, but you just got a feeling that I don't know. I'm anecdotally here speaking, having spoken to Americans who I've been with in London or and friends with wherever else, and speaking to them about cricket, maybe let's say 6, 7 years ago, they'd see it as that quirky English game. Whereas you saw around the World Cup, it was being treated as a fully fledged professional sport that had a future, had a sort of current, and it has money and it has skillful professional athletes, which I think if you're playing into the US market, right, money's always a big player, but they want to see the best of the best playing out there, whatever that sport is. Um, so in that sense, yeah, the growth. I was only there for 30 days to see that individual tournament on the ground, but at the same time, I could tell that that was growing from the pre-World Cup into the World Cup and through the back of it as well. And also talking to journalists around it as well, like the interaction they're getting with the players and knowing that they're going to speak to Pat Cummins, who signed a multi-year contract with the team. They know these people are smart people. They've got smart advisors, and if they're doing it, then they've got to take notice, right? So yeah, the growth is definitely there. What that looks like, I think you're probably better placed to suit that, to be honest. You've been following it for many more years in terms of the US domestic market, and I'd be interested to know sort of if you've seen it sort of double, triple. I obviously can't put figures in it in the last couple of years, but how rapid was that rise? I'd be interested to know.
Yeah. Yeah, I just you know, when I was in like grade school or something and I would try and talk to my friends in elementary school about cricket, they kept thinking I was talking about a bug. But now I'm in high school and people know what cricket is. There's like local cricket clubs even in the US right now. There's the MLC, there's also minor league cricket. And now that the US has hosted the World Cup and they're hosting the MLC with literally the best players in the world, it's almost like it's hard to ignore, and the impact of like cricket in America is just getting bigger and bigger. Yeah.
I think in terms of the minor league cricket, it's something that isn't really touched on in the international press really, but this isn't just a flash in the pan that happens every 4 or 5 weeks every year. This is the minor league cricket is one of the busiest cricket tournaments going, right? These people could be playing 3 games a weekend. Um, and that's fascinating to see. They're committed. They just love the game and they just want to get on with it. And when they get to play in the pinnacle in front of these mass TV markets in San Francisco or New York, wherever else it is, the huge opportunity to show actually what they're all about. And there's some great players under there that people would have no clue that are doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I know a lot of players that got signed into the MLC this year that had breakout seasons also like played a lot of minor league cricket before that. And I think another thing that's happening in the US that's going to make it even the MLC even better tournament. There's so many under youth like US youth teams that are playing right now. There's registration for an under 23 tournament. There was under 15 tournaments for both boys and girls. And I think that just bringing youth into the tournaments like they're having hubs all over, like in Texas or New Jersey, North Carolina. While they do that all over, it's gonna really help the sport grow among just like communities too, but also across the country. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a major thing, right? The MLC can do all it can to attract the best players in the world, but until you start having that sustainable, consistent federation and league drive where they're building the players from whatever it is, under 12s through to under 18s, male and female side of things, when that happens for 4 or 5 years, you'll notice that pool of talent just grows exponentially. And you can always fall back when you have 2 injuries. You're not down to the bare bones. You're coming back with some amazing players who can justify bigger teams and more teams in the MLC in the future, potentially.
Yeah, that's a great thing. I hope to see that in the future of MLC. We'll be back next year. Another question I had for you. So I know you have pretty good roles in media PR. How is cricket different from other sports, let's say, in those fields, you think?
Yeah. Okay. Interesting question. I think it's there's obviously the sporting side of things and how the culture is behind that. So you'd probably argue that cricket has a more laid back, easygoing nature than, let's say, American football at its highest level, college football, whatever it might be, whatever level like we're talking about. I think it's probably more to do with the market you're in. So, like, let's talk about MLC again, and we've got, let's say, three quarters, two-thirds of some of the biggest players, best players in the world. You've got Rashid Khan, you've got Pat Cummins, you've got sort of like the leading South African players. When they're out in Morrisville and Grand Prairie and Dallas, the media and PR culture is very different, I'd imagine, to what it's like when you're on the floor in Kolkata and Mumbai out for the IPL. So there is, yeah, it's hard to compare sport to sport. Obviously, the more money you get in it, the more stressful, the more protected, I guess, people become. But what I found is that the players themselves, they're just happy playing cricket, right? They're not doing it as a business. They're not doing it as a sort of some ulterior motive. They just want to get out on the pitch. And fortunately, they do have enough time on the side of that where they're not playing basketball games day in, day out, or baseball games 2 or 3 times in the weekend. They actually have the, I'm not going to call it downtime, that'd be doing them a disservice when they've got physios and I've seen the hard work that goes on behind the scenes. But they are willing to talk and they are willing to chat. And I think everyone knows that cricketers are, yeah, generally easygoing. With, yeah, they like the good life people, and they're more than willing to share that love and that enjoyment with their teammates, with the press, with the fans, where they can, where it's realistic. So I'd say, yeah, it probably does have correlations with some sports, but it's hard to make that direct comparison. But I would say it's that obviously the bigger the audience is, the more the huge markets you play in, that you do lose some of that access that we had at the MLT this year. So, for example, you coming down, that just like making the brave call to the start to see if you can go and interview a couple of unicorns players. If you were in the IPL, you'd probably have 10,000 kids queuing up to have that opportunity, right? But actually, the players are no different. The teams are no different. It's just that they have to sort of protect and sort of work out the right way with PR agencies and media representatives and their own agents as well, and that sort of thing. So, yeah, no, it's a good question. I think there's a whole bunch of correlations and sort of relationships you can make there. But I think on the whole, it's generally to do with the sort of, yeah, pressure of that individual market you're in at the time.
Yeah. I think in the few years as like the market's growing, we'll also see like more money being put in MLC and maybe more like press and I guess like just the mainstream media is also gonna see it more. But I think just
Yeah.
when I at least when I went there, the players were like so nice and just so like down to earth. I hope that's something that stays in the future like that.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously up to the media to tell that story as well, right? We want to speak to the local markets when we're in Grand Prairie. We want to speak to Dallas sports press. We want to speak to the local San Francisco press when they're back there as well. You've got to grow it everywhere. You've got to tell those stories. It's not going to be cut through where you can get through into a million fans view cricket overnight. This is I think I could borrow a phrase from David White, the general manager at Unicorn, he called it like a death by a thousand cuts. I'm not sure if he'd be happy with me to say that, but I think that's what it is, right? It's you've got to take every opportunity, however small, however large, however medium size it is, just to sort of yeah, drive through with that. And it's up to us to sort of work with teams like the Unicorns and the MLC's media representation as well, and sort of sort of community fundraisers and sort of meetups and that sort of thing to get every eyeball as possible that are potentially interested so that they can then be engaged in 2 years time, 4 years time, when you can start selling season tickets and you can start selling more merchandise and that sort of thing, really. So yeah, I think as well, there were a handful of journalists regularly knocking around, and there was definitely some interest from abroad who obviously couldn't make the justification after the World Cup to come to stay over for another month, for example. But it was building, and the interest was there. The people I was speaking to were saying, I came out of interest to come to a first game in Dallas because it's out of season for whatever sport I normally cover, because it was generally a downtime, right? But now they're like, well, this is actually something I enjoy. The passion of the fans and the demographic there was just intriguing to them. I think it's just they didn't see the potential size of what it was and the quality on this one go. So yeah, that's only going to grow over time.
Yeah, I saw some like events online where it was like I think it was the San Francisco Unicorns like Family Day or something. Just seeing those videos
Yeah.
online, like those kids looked so happy being there, and it wasn't just kids too, it was like actual like families. It was just so great to see like the community growing. Yeah.
Yeah, and you never know with those things. It was Z and JJ and the Unicorns team who put a lot of work into that at the start, and you have no idea if 200 people are going to turn up or 5,000 people are going to turn up. Luckily, it was in the thousands rather than the tens because
Mhm.
they've built a good support. They've targeted the right market. They know what they want to do, and they've got the right players there to sort of engage with them. If you give something back, then people are going to come out for it. And it goes back to what I said at the start, like the Bay Area, they know their elite sport, right? And
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
the same thing that we're doing in cricket.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, next question. What was your favorite moment from this year or last year of MLC, you think?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, hopefully this year. Um, it's probably not the most important moment, but the chase against the freedom in that dead rubber, the last league game. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I can get the scores up, whatever.
Yeah.
But they were obviously dominating the league, coming in, and the Unicorns just absolutely smashed them from a total that looked unrecognizable after Duckwood Lewis came in. I can't remember what it was like 170 off
Mm.
11, 12, 13
Yeah.
overs. I can't remember. Um, and just seeing the confidence of the players, like I think Sanjay Krishnamurti got a few runs. I think Hassan Khan got a few runs. I may be mistaken here, but the local boys did amazingly well, backed up by the experienced players. And it was, yes, it was a dead rubber in a way, but to get that sort of psychological edge on potentially what you are your key opponents, and they turned out to be obviously going up in the grand final against them. I think that's probably the game where I turn around to sort of the team, the sort of back support staff team and the media team and the social team. You know, like that was it. This team, they're onto something. They're building that confidence. There's been moments where there's been fits and starts where some players have got in, maybe the batsmen have done all right, but the bowlers come unstuck and vice versa, or like the opening and middle to save them every time. But that seemed to be where everyone was on the same page and everyone going like, "We've got this. Like, we are here to play aggressive cricket. We bat hard. We bat early. It doesn't always come off, but it worked out that time, and it was great to see. Just going like, okay, we're in the game. We're still in the game. Oh, now we're actually dominating the game, and it actually was. It wasn't comfortable in the end, but yeah, they brought it home
Yeah.
relatively
I
smoothly.
remember
Yeah,
watching like I think that was like one of the last group stage games,
yeah.
and then we saw like they were gonna have to play Washington again in the playoffs or whatever. It was really cool to see just like, Washington was dominating the entire league at that point, but when they saw that they could lose, it's just showing how like anyone can beat anyone at any point, and that's just one of the greater things about cricket. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, just to give a shout out to Freedom after winning, having Steve Smith and Travis Head in the form they were in throughout most of the tournament, particularly Travis. It was quite. I think would he get 6 or 7 50s in a row? Maybe I'm
Oh yeah.
too high there, but
Yeah.
it's hard to play that sometimes and to get one over on them and then give us the confidence to go. We can do this again. Obviously, 2020 cricket's a lottery in an aspect at times, right? But
Mhm.
yeah, that was a huge moment. I thought anyway.
Yeah. Both they were both really good teams. Okay. Next question. I know you've done a lot with the unicorns now, but I want to know what are if you have any more like goals or plans for the future in your career?
Um, yeah. So to be honest, cricket is the sport that I probably follow the most. I can't play it at all. I play a couple of social games every year. And that's terrible. I'm bowling about three no balls and over. getting out and probably averaging 3 or 4 with the bat, 4 an hour or 6 an hour, that sort of thing. Leave it to the better players on the team. That's how I see it. I like to captain the sides and sort of give them a chance. But I don't know. I'm going off tangent here anyway. What I'd like to get more hands on is probably domestic cricket over here. I'd love to sort of get involved with. I live in London, so obviously got the Oval and you've got Lords. But maybe I see myself moving out of London over time, and if I can get an opportunity to work with a 100 team in the press office or a T20 Blast team or county long term in a sort of freelance role or whatever it might be, I'd be fascinated to do that. However that looks, who knows? Obviously, cricket budgets and finances are always changing, and where those roles are and where they sit and how much resources people can give to the media and social side of things. There's always obviously people employed full time in these roles, but if I can find my feet at the right place at the right time, I'd love to sort of pick up on that really. And similarly, like my other sort of sporting passion is rugby. So I guess they've got a similar following back here. One's winter sport, one's cricket, summer sport. So if I could sort of do what I did with the unicorns in a sort of more regular fashion back here, that would be something
Yeah,
I'd definitely like to explore.
yeah, I know. Cricket's growing in America, but we know like how much cricket's played in England, so I think that would be really cool too. Uh,
Yeah. Oh no. So yeah, I went down to the 100 eliminator game the other day. It was against Birmingham, uh, against I don't know who it was against actually now, but it was brilliant to see. And just I know some people debate whether the hundreds one format too many, but the proportion of families and younger people there and the female audience was so sort of encouraging to see. And if you can tap into any of that from the US side of things, um, it's great. And I think, to be fair, I think the US market is already 2, 3 years ahead. They're not trying to pick up something. They can pick the best bits from everywhere, right? So yeah, no, it's good to see that.
yeah, I think the 100 format's really interesting. It might be like some people might not like it, but I think it's like really good for like cricket. It makes some innovations. Like there's a lot of changes, even maybe like some of them aren't needed. It just like brings a new fresh aspect of the game, and I think like younger kids, and especially since now that there's a women 100 with like the same franchises, I think that's also helping them grow as well.
I think I was listening to an interesting radio interview the other day and they were talking about where the 100 fits. And there was a good hour of conversation while I was driving while there was a rain delay, which is pretty standard over here when you're following cricket in England. And they made a good point in that the 100 is a success. People aren't sure how much of a success it is. If you look at the women's game, that's the one that could be a standalone thing. If everything else went away with the 100, if you left the women's 100 game alone, that has proven to appeal to average markets of maybe talking about 4 or 5 thousand, like multi-thousand people are coming for those double headers. If the men's game goes back to T20, depending on who buys out whichever teams, then
Mhm.
that's so be it. But there's already been that pickup from the women's side, which is undoubtable. So yeah, no, it was interesting to listen to that.
Yeah, I think, however, like the more games that are being played with like the most competitive players, it's just good for the women's sport like as a whole, just so that they can get more experience and more skill. And also there's more people viewing it, which means more money is being put into women's sports. But yeah, I think that's really cool.
Really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
final, this is gonna be our final question. What is your advice to aspiring individuals looking to get into sports as a career?
Yeah. So I think there are two ways here. And if you look at my sort of when I was growing up and I was speaking to career advisors and that sort of thing, and I think I got advice. I said to them I wanted to be involved in sport. I didn't really know what I wanted at that point, 14, 15, 16, who knows what. And they told me to go work at an accountancy firm, work for a good grad job, and then come back in 3, 4 years' time and decide what I wanted to do. That bored me to tears. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying when I'm that age and I want to get into sport, don't tell me to do this. That's a rant. What I would say is that that is definitely a good path. Like if you can get a good foundation in management, if you want to be on the business management side of things, that's definitely a way to go. Like I said earlier, you can generally find the way that sports going and the revenues are growing and the teams are growing and the support staff's growing and the multinational globalized nature of it. Whatever field you're in, you're going to find a role. So I would be passionate about sport, but I'd be interested from a sports business point of view, which I think maybe in the US, you're probably 10 years ahead of where we have been in the UK over here, in the money on the table has been so massive for so long. But what I'd say is that keep your eyes open for those opportunities if you're not fitting into one of those categories. And if you want to just sort of start working for your local amateur side, for example, get experience in the game. It might be that you help out or volunteer on a match day, or it might be that you start writing a couple of articles in the program notes for your Sunday league team or whatever it might be. whether it's journalism or it's marketing or whatever. Over time, that's going to put you in good stead if you go to college, university, wherever after that. You can come back to that knowing that I still like sports. I'm still interested in sports, and therefore there's going to be those roles available for me if I know what I want. Particularly in the US, we've got so many markets to play with across states to state. So yeah, I guess that's a roundabout saying is if you know what you want to do and you want to have a more straightforward way to it, get a sort of respected job, and then you can maybe find a role later on. Or if not, just do the fun things where you can go get involved with the matches on the weekend or on the Wednesday night or whenever it is. Just to say, get involved, and those people will be there to help you along the journey.
Yeah, I think that's some great advice that I think a lot of, especially kids here, could hear and take a lot from because a lot of kids love like sports, but it's not like the typical field that many would go to. But it's just something that I think would be so fun and like fulfilling for a lot of people. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I'm privileged in terms of where the field that I work in. I hear people go and get a role at MLS, or they go and get a full-time role at the MLC, or it might be ECB or some sort of federation or board or league, and that's quite normal where I am. But if I put me back 10 years ago when I was 16, 17, 18, whatever I was, that's more than 10 years ago, then yeah, I'd have looked up to those guys, like, wow, how are you involved in that work day to day? And it's not that much difference, really. You just got to choose that path.
Yeah. Well, that's all I have for you today. Do you have any other thoughts you want to talk about?
Um, no, I guess nothing off the top of my head, but I would say I just wanted to sort of massively congratulate all the organizational guys out here for the MLC last year, sorry, a couple of months ago. And also just the fans that kept coming back and back and back. Yourself, for example, traveling 3, 4 hours to come to Morrisville to have, was it 2 rained off games in the end? And in the same thing in Dallas, like I was seeing the same fans walk through the gates at 6:01 or 5:01 whenever they opened. It was great to see that these people are sort of, they're obviously coming to enjoy the game, but they're ambassadors and they're getting their mates involved. And I just encourage anyone that's involved in cricket, whatever you're doing, however old or young you are, just go and see if you can find like a minor league game if it's in the US or wherever else it is, and just go and play a bit or throw a few balls down or just have a watch and have a couple of drinks and have some food with some friends at the weekend. It's a yeah great place to be in, and if the more people do that, the better position that the US cricket's going to be in for the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah. I remember when I was talking to Pat Cummins in an interview, I asked him what his message was to the American fans, and his main message was just to show up and get involved in cricket, and that's just how the sport's gonna grow. But yeah,
Yeah, that's his media training compared to mine. He can put it into 5 words. Show up and get involved. I like that. That's it's that simple, right? If you're interested in it, don't think twice. Just go and find something. The cricketing families are very easygoing, welcoming. So just, yeah, go and get involved.
yeah. Well, it was so nice talking to you. Thank you for coming on. Yeah.
Cheers, Anna, and well, thanks for representing the unicorns with the t-shirt as well. So
Oh
I hope you're
yeah,
wearing that
like
most
the shirt.
weekends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got
And
it.
yeah, hopefully see you next year as well. But no, it was an absolute pleasure
Yeah.
talking to you. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much. It was great talking to you. Well, that's
Cheers.
all. That's all from this episode. And yeah, thank you for watching. Bye.